What's your worst fear? A fear of public failure, unemployment, fear of heights, the fear that you'll never find the right spouse or enjoy good health, the fear of being trapped or abandoned or forgotten. These are real fears, and they're born out of legitimate concerns. But any fear left unchecked can metastasize into obsessions. You know, the step between prudence and paranoia is short and steep. Prudence wears a seatbelt. Paranoia avoids cars. Prudence washes with soap. Paranoia avoids all human contact. A prudence saves for old age. Paranoia hoards even trash. Prudence prepares and plans. Paranoia panics. Prudence calculates the risk and takes the plunge. Paranoia never enters the water. The decisive acts of the gospel drama are played out on two stages: Gethsemane's garden and Golgotha's cross. Friday's cross witnessed the severest suffering, but Thursday's garden staged the profoundest fear. It was here, amidst the olive trees, that Jesus bowed with his face to the ground, praying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Now, why? Why was Jesus afraid? Of what was Jesus afraid? Well, it had something to do with a cup. Jesus said, "If it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away." Now, cup in biblical terminology was more than a drinking utensil. Cup equaled God's anger, his judgment, his punishment. The cup equaled Jesus' worst case scenario, to be the recipient of God's wrath. He had never felt God's fury, didn't deserve to. He had never experienced isolation from his Father. The two had been one for eternity. He had never known physical death. He was an immortal being, yet within a few short hours, Jesus would face them all. God would unleash his sin-hating wrath on his sin-covered Son. And what was Jesus' response? Well, he was afraid. He was deathly afraid. But what he did with his fears shows us what to do with ours. He prayed, and he begged his followers to do the same. You see, Jesus faced his ultimate fear with honest prayer. I think sometimes we overcomplicate this topic. We prescribe words for prayer, places for prayer, clothing for prayer, postures for prayer, durations, intonations, and incantations. Yet, Jesus' garden appeal had none of these. It was really brief, just 22 English words. It was straightforward: let this cup of suffering be taken away, and it was trusting. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine. It was low on slick. It was high on authentic, less a silver-tongued saint in the sanctuary and more a frightened child in a father's lap. That's it. That's it. Jesus' garden prayer is a child's prayer. Abba, he prayed, using that homespun word a child would use while scampering up on the lap of Papa. And when we offer our requests, we ask God to take this cup away, this cup of disease or betrayal or financial collapse or joblessness or conflict or senility. We ask him for help. Yeah, prayer is that simple. And such simple prayer equipped Christ to stare down his deepest fear. Can I encourage you to do likewise? Just fight your dragons in Gethsemane's garden, those persistent, ugly villains of the heart. Talk to God about them. Talk to God about them. And be specific. I don't want to lose my spouse, Lord. Help me to fear less and trust you more. Or I have to fly tomorrow, Lord, and I can't sleep for fear that some terrorist is going to get on board and take down the plane. Won't you remove this fear? Or the bank just called. It's about to foreclose on our home. What's going to happen to my family? Can you teach me to trust? Or I don't want my kids to be sick, Lord. Please protect them and help me to raise them well. Be specific in your prayers. You see, Satan loves to leave us in this ill-defined fog of unrest. Our response to this cloud is simply details, please. We identify what this cup is, and we talk to God about it. Putting worries to words disrobes them. They look silly standing there naked. Jesus made his fears public. Did you know that the book of Hebrews says that Jesus offered up prayers and petitions with loud cries and tears to the one who could save him from death? He prayed loudly enough to be heard and recorded and begged his community of friends to pray with him. You see, his prayer in the garden for Christians, well, it becomes a picture of the church. A church, a place where fears can be verbalized and pronounced and stripped down and denounced, and escape from the wordless doctrine of suppressed frights. A healthy church is really a place where our fears go to die. We pierce them through with Scripture and psalms of celebration and lament, and we melt them in the sunlight of confession. We extinguish them in the waterfall of worship, choosing to gaze at God, not at our dreads. So, my friend, the next time you find yourself facing a worst-case moment, just do this. Verbalize your angst to a circle of God seekers. This is an essential step. Find your version of Peter, James, and John. The big deal and good news is this: you don't need to live alone with your fear. Besides, what if your fears are nothing more than the devil's hoax, a hell-hatched, joy-stealing prank? I have a friend who was dreading a letter from the IRS. According to their early calculation, he owed them money he did not have. Well, he was told to expect a letter detailing the amount. When the letter finally arrived, his courage failed him. He couldn't bear to open it. So the envelope sat on his desk for 5 days while he writhed in dread. How much would it be? Where would he get the money? For how long would he be sent to prison? Finally, he summoned up the courage and the gumption to open the envelope. He found not a bill to be paid, but a check to be cashed. The IRS, as it turned out, owed him money. He wasted 5 days on needless fear. Friend, there's no need to assume the worst. As followers of God, you and I have a huge asset. We know that everything is going to turn out all right. Christ hasn't budged from his throne, and Romans 8 and verse 28 has not evaporated from the Bible. Our problems have always been his possibilities. The kidnapping of Joseph resulted in the preservation of his family. The persecution of Daniel led to a cabinet position. Christ entered the world by a surprise pregnancy and redeemed it through an unjust murder. Dare we believe what the Bible teaches, that no disaster is ultimately fatal? Chrysostom was the Archbishop of Constantinople from 389 to 404 AD, and he gained a following by his eloquent criticisms of the wealthy and the powerful. He was twice banished by authorities. And he once asked, "What can I fear? Will it be death? But you know that Christ is my life, and I shall gain by death. Will it be exile? But the earth and all its fullness is the Lord's. Will it be the loss of wealth? But we brought nothing into the world, and we carry nothing out. Thus, all the terrors of the world are contemptible in my eyes, and I smile at all its good things. Poverty I do not fear, riches I do not sigh for, and death I do not shrink from." The Apostle Paul would have applauded that paragraph. He penned his final words in the bowels of a Roman prison, chained to a guard within earshot of his executioner's footsteps. Worst case scenario? Well, not from Paul's perspective. In his words, God's looking after me, keeping me safe in the kingdom of heaven. All praise to him, praise forever. Paul chose to trust his Father. Another fear fell victim to trust.